Good afternoon, everybody, or I should say good morning. There it's morning, here it's afternoon. So hello from COP26 here in Glasgow. My name's Jakir. I'm the CEO of Vigil. Welcome to Sound the Call, a Jewish journey through COP26. I'm here with my new friend and partner, Reverend Susan Hendershot, CEO of Interfaith Power Light. Really grateful to be here together with you in dialogue and doing good work here with a few 30,000 of our closest friends, right?
Yes.
We're in the green zone. You may have heard about the green zone and the blue zone. I think I would define the difference as the blue zone seems to be more people, and it's where there's like hundreds, it seems, of pavilions from every country and all kinds of different displays, and also where the world leaders are gathering, although Phil Paul and I tried to get in, they wouldn't let us into that part. And the green zone is more sort of civil society and like open to the public. So some great stuff here. And Susan, it's just great to be with you. So we'd love for you to start by just telling us a little about yourself and about Interfaith Power Light and what the last few days have been like for you.
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, thanks for inviting me to be here. I'm thrilled to be with Hazon and in this space with you. And so Interfaith Power and Light was founded 21 years ago as a religious response to global warming. And our mission is to inspire and mobilize people of faith and conscience to take bold and just action on climate change. So from the start, we have been working on climate change with the interfaith community. So people of all, as we say, all faith traditions and none. The spiritual but not religious is certainly part of our big tent. And we're really excited to be here this year because this is the first year that IPL has had its own accreditation. So instead of working through another organization to get a badge to attend, we actually were able to share badges with some other folks in the community and invite others to be a part of this. Boy, my first few days. So I got in on Saturday, and so I'm particularly jet lagged today. Day 3 is the worst, I hear. But it's actually been a really interesting couple of days. On Sunday, I was able to attend both the Interfaith Prayer Vigil that was held in George Square in Glasgow. It was a really beautiful event. There were representatives from a multitude of religious traditions who were speaking, giving prayers in their own tradition, sometimes in languages that we didn't understand, but we all knew that the Spirit was with us, the Sacred Spirit was with us in that space. And it was beautiful to hear those from the Jewish, the Christian, the Muslim, Sikh, Baha'i, Buddhist, Hindu, pagan traditions who were all sharing just their own deep spirituality with one another and why we need to come together as faiths to care for the earth, which sustains us all. So that was a lovely event. And then it was followed that same afternoon by the Talanoa Dialogue that was held at Garnet Hill Synagogue. It was a beautiful, beautiful historic space. And again, speakers who shared with us kind of at the beginning before folks broke out into smaller groups for conversation. And I was really, really struck by one of the speakers who was from Fiji, who was talking about, of course, the island nations that are, losing their homeland, and wearing this beautiful shell cross. He happened to be Christian, but necklace that was made out of shells. And he said he wears it because it's part of his culture, and they know that the children there may not be able to share that culture. They may not be able to continue creating these beautiful necklaces and jewelry out of these shells. So really heartbreaking. Of course, we know that, we've heard that about loss and damage, and nations, especially island nations and low-lying countries, who have massive population displacement. But to hear those personal stories is really, really impactful. So, to be able to participate in that so far has been lovely. And also to know that there are so many other faith leaders who are here with us in this space.
Yeah, thank you. It's been amazing just walking through the halls and seeing the Archbishop of Canterbury and the Chief Rabbi. And so there's really, and it feels very right and aligned that faith leaders are here and that presence is being felt to the extent that a 30,000 group of people can feel that presence. And I came in after those events, but did get to a bagel brunch at Garnet Hill Synagogue yesterday morning when I first arrived.
Good.
And we'll be there. We're hosting a Shabbat dinner.
We were greeted by a bagpiper at the door. So it's really just this whole lovely, cultural experience all the way around.
Awesome. It's a beautiful space. And we're hosting a Shabbat dinner there Friday night for the Israeli delegation and Jews from all around the world that are here. So really, really wonderful. And, just in the last 24 hours or so, there's been some news that folks back home have probably heard and we're watching as well. On the lighter, more superficial front, there was this apology from President Biden for the prior administration's withdrawal from the Paris Accord. Much more impactfully, the Biden administration released a methane rule, methane being one of the most pernicious greenhouse gases that really needs to be aggressively contained and addressed. So that's encouraging. Here at COP26, two significant events, or one yesterday and one today. One is that Prime Minister Modi of India yesterday pledged that major country and major emitter has pledged to get to net zero by 2070. Encouraging to see that pledge. The timing is concerning, but it is at least a clear goal for that really important nation. And then more collectively, global leaders as a whole, yesterday and today, this morning, pledged to try to end deforestation by 2030. 2030. That's right around the corner. And deforestation is not a small thing, because we're going to stop that entirely. A lot of talk about biodiversity and nature positivity here. So just some of the big sort of things, and my sense is kind of that's the idea. Every day there's going to be new, hopefully, big commitments and pledges made. Question is, how does it all add up? So, someone that's been, you mentioned earlier, you've been to a prior COP in Madrid. What's your sense of those sort of headlines? Are we on track to where you thought we would be at this point in the gathering? How are you feeling about all the headlines we're seeing?
Well, let's keep in mind the last COP that I attended was 2 years ago in Madrid, and the U.S. had exited the Paris Agreement. So while the U.S. civil society was present and certainly still pushing for goals, there was a sense of it was very difficult to say that you could deliver on anything at home, right? And so for IPL, one of the ways that we think about our work in relationship to the UN and the UNFCCC process and COP is that we want to be able to, urge the U.S. to do its work at home, because you can't make promises in the global community that you can't deliver on it. So a lot of the work that we're focused on is advocacy around U.S. federal policy. So that's kind of our way into the conversation. So imagine 2 years ago coming, under the Trump administration and recognizing that we couldn't accomplish anything at home. It was, we were completely playing defense on everything. There was no legislation. All of the regulatory work was being rolled back that had been accomplished under the Obama administration. And so it was pretty discouraging, to show up in that space, but still we felt like our presence was important, that global leaders need to see that US civil society was still in, even if officially the US government was not still in. So turn that around to 2021 and where we are now here in Glasgow, which is the fact that we have an administration that is actively working. So we've looked at the bipartisan infrastructure plan back home in the US, which is sort of still awaiting approval from Congress. Also the Build Back Better plan. And those are moving slowly, but they are moving forward, and they're significant pieces of legislation. So assuming that those pass in some shape or form in the next few weeks, that is already sort of a marker of our commitment. Then alongside that, you have things like the fuel efficiency standards that we've been working on, the methane standards that have just been released, the global methane pledge that has been signed by a number of nations. And I feel like it's sort of night and day between, going to Madrid and coming to Glasgow and feeling, I think, a much deeper sense of hope that we're earnestly striving for something better. It's not perfect, right? It's not perfect. We know it's not perfect, but we're getting farther than we've been before, and we also know that we need to increase our ambition and go even farther in order to keep warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius, which we know is where we need to go.
Yeah. Thank you for saying that, because there was so much, frankly, demoralizing hype going into this.
Yes.
Like, the week or two leading up to this, it's like, why am I even going? Everybody's written it off. It's not going to be impactful. And to really recall the sense of perspective. Where were we? Where are we now? I have a dear friend, CEO of the JCC in Baltimore, Brock Herman, who always says, we're directionally correct. We're going in the right direction. We might not, and unfortunately, there's this feeling, about, yes, that's really important, but it's not just directionally correct. We have to be correct on the pace as well. Yes. So I think that's where sort of the tension is, right? We're heading in the right direction, and I think the Prime Minister Modi's pledge is actually the case in point of that. Great that we're pledging net zero. What does it mean for any country and for the world as a whole to be there on time versus late? And obviously 1.5 degrees already takes into account, we're seeing things like we're not even at 1.5 yet, and think about what we just saw this season. So,
well, and I think the other thing that I'll just tack on to that is, we know that as faith communities who have been working on issues that are intersected with climate change for, ever, right? I mean, we've been working on poverty, hunger, population migration. We've been working on a series of racial and economic justice issues, right, across our histories. And I think the thing that I want to very clearly say is it matters that we increase ambition, and it matters that we go fast, but it also matters how we do it and who is included. And that has historically been part of the issue, right? Is wealthy countries sort of coming in and like setting the pace and setting the terms, and you have vulnerable nations, low-lying nations, island nations who have contributed almost nothing to the issue but are suffering the worst damages. And so we have to be really clear that we have to center communities, we have to center indigenous nations, and we have to center justice, climate justice and ecological justice in this work. And so, for going back to sort of US policy, one of the things that we've been really interested in is the Justice 40 initiative. 40% of money is going into frontline and indigenous communities. And the same thing, I think, when we look at what's happening with finance here globally at the COP, which is we have to look at not only mitigation, which of course is important and has historically been sort of the marker, right, that we're meeting, but we know that we're already having to adapt. In the US, we're having to adapt, and globally, we're having to adapt. So this goal of striving to get 50% of climate finance to adaptation, and 50% to mitigation is important. Then we have the issue of loss and damage, which is, of course, monies that really need to be on top of mitigation and adaptation to help countries that can no longer adapt, right? And that's a really discouraging thing to think of, but it's the facts on the ground. And as I think for the US, as the world's largest historical emitter, you know, we have a historic responsibility to really pay our fair share for climate finance to help these overburdened countries. So I just wanted to say it's like fast is good, but we have to do it right. It's not just fast; it's also just.
Yeah, amen. And I think, you know, and that just sort of adds up to how big of a deal this is. How many organizations and people and communities are coming together. What a gargantuan task to do this at a pace that is meaningful and in a coalition that is right. I mean, it's profound, the effort here. And I just wonder, as you look out over the next week, the next 2 weeks of your time here, what are you looking forward to, both here and maybe, even in aftermath of this? What are you up to? What's on your horizon?
Wow, that's a big question. I think honestly, the thing that's most impactful to me being in this space is getting to connect with my colleagues, many of whom are based in the US and I still never get to see because of COVID and so on. I love this sense of working in solidarity with faith-based organizations who often don't have a seat at the table or sort of shuffled off to the side, right? And so to be working together in this space and bringing sort of a unified voice on, the moral opportunity that we have to provide leadership is really important to me. And so, so that's always the number one thing is just the relationships, being with people, seeing some of my colleagues who have been working in this space also for a long time, who aren't from faith-based organizations, they're secular organizations, but doing equally brilliant work. And then I think, importantly, in terms of sort of outcomes that we're looking for, I mean, we really are looking for some solid outcomes on loss and damage. We want to see this issue taken up seriously and with intentionality, instead of it sort of being a side conversation or sort of somewhat connected to adaptation. It's like it needs to be a standalone issue. And, the piece around climate finance, there's a lot of things that have to get clarified around climate finance. And I'm hoping that real progress can be made here because at the end of the day, I've seen some signs outside where they say, COP26 is a talk shop. It's a talk shop. And so I want, I'd like for the nation states to prove that it can be more than a talk shop, that like real solutions can be found here and coming together in solidarity and with ambition. We'll see if that happens, but I'd like to come in with a sense of hope that it can be accomplished.
Amen. As you know, as an interfaith leader, so the Shema, the central prayer about unity in Judaism says, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your might. With all your might, put your money where your mouth is, put your capacity where your mouth is. And, I just walked out of a session about, how to engage youth leaders. It's an amazing panel of youth leaders from all around the world, amazing activists from China and others. And I think that's really, what the rising tide, not only youth, but definitely youth, like, yes, we get it. It's nice that you're talking about it, world leaders. Do it.
Right.
And, I had somebody yesterday say something like, man, think about how much money is spent on this event and how much, like, it's only worth it if there's really a lot of action that comes out of it. And, there's also this teaching in Judaism, when the Torah is given on Mount Sinai, the Israelites say, Na'aseh v'nishma, we will do and we will listen. It's like, we're gonna do it. We're also gonna figure it out as we go, but we're gonna do it.
Yeah.
So on that, front, Reverend, you work with Interfaith context for many years. You get to see the Jewish community and other communities show up in that context. And I wonder, if you could, sometimes when you're in it, you don't get to see it as the same way as a little bit of a different perspective. What do you see as the strengths of the Jewish community in this work, the unique sort of contributions we can make? Maybe there are unique challenges that we have as well. So what's your perspective on how the Jewish community can show up in a deeper way?
Oh, wow. Well, I think that, first of all, I think the Jewish community already is showing up in a deep and meaningful way. So let me say that. And I have many, many Jewish colleagues that I work very closely with in Washington, D.C. And many of our IPL state affiliate leaders are Jewish. And so I see the impact of their work every day. So just want to say that. I'm going to just share a little personal story here, which is, it's challenging sometimes, like you said, when you're doing this work every day.
Right.
I mean, honestly, I think everybody cares about climate change, or, it's like, or everybody knows. And
everybody wants to.
I step back and I think like, oh, wait, I'm living this all the time, right? So it's very different than where most people are in their day-to-day lives. And so, I think working on climate is incredibly challenging, right? It is a burnout issue to work on. And so one of the things that I have found really meaningful is carving out some time every morning in my day to do some spiritual grounding. And, I read a psalm every day, which is, close to my heart. And I love reading Abraham Joshua Heschel. And part of the reason for that is, I think it's in his book, God in Search of Man. He has this really beautiful sort of series of little chapters that are on awe and wonder, reverence. And so for me, though, it's been really impactful in my life, and trying to remember, sort of looking out, that we can see out the windows from where we're sitting, and seeing like the clouds and the snatches of blue sky and the geese flying overhead, and recognizing that, all of this beauty that exists is sort of, from my tradition and your tradition, sort of emanating from God, right? Sort of coming from God, and to be able to recognize the awe and the wonder is a way of reconnecting with God and with the sacred and the spiritual. And I need to remind myself of that in this work, because it can be such a pace where we're going, and we're reading news articles and papers, and we're writing things, and responding to things. And there's a way in which technology can kind of separate us from the world, the natural world around us. And so getting back out into nature, getting out into that sense of awe and wonder. And I think, to me, there's that piece in the Jewish tradition which is done so well, but also the recognition of the Sabbath. That there is time for rest, and that the land rests, and the people rest, and the creatures rest, and we all rest. And I often wonder, like, if we even spent one day of the week not buying something, right? Like not being consumers. What would that mean for how the earth might be able to heal, right? And so I think those are just some of the really beautiful, like sort of theological contributions that the Jewish tradition gives to us in the climate movement.
Amen. Thank you so much. First of all, the forecast was it's going to be cold and rainy all week this week.
Yes.
It's partly sunny.
Yes, there's some sun.
It's been nice this week, and there's a beautiful river. It's like there's an opportunity here where you enter this mean, yesterday in the Blue Zone, I was like, it's almost like a casino experience. Like there's no windows, you have no idea.
Yes,
It's just,
exactly.
so like here in this experience, it's more to like go outside, take a deep breath,
Right.
come back in.
Right.
And I think, you know, our movement and others in the Jewish world and outside, you know, beyond, just connecting to the natural world is such a powerful tool here. You know, we help protect what we care about, what we love. And I think the community is doing that in really powerful ways. And talking to Bill Paul yesterday, and he was like, what if Shabbat and Shmita, this is the sabbatical year,
Yes,
in the sabbatical year,
exactly.
what would it look like for that idea to take hold? I've been for years been dreaming, forget about Shmita, just Shabbat. If we could just convince more people around the world, you don't have to take on any religious commitments, just try taking a day off, one day a week from technology, from buying things. How radical would that be in terms of our consumption and impact? So I just really, really appreciate your time. And you know, one thing I want to close with here, let me see if I can find this, is our in our tradition, in our liturgy, we have a prayer called the Traveler's Prayer. I don't know if you've ever come across that.
I have.
Yeah. So this has been a really powerful thing, particularly in the context of this event, you know, because as all the people that come here, you know, are really doing holy week, you know, and so just offering a prayer as we close, you know, for everybody that's here. May we all be successful. Maybe we're together in partnership and move forward, you know. So in that spirit, the Traveler's Prayer. May it be your will, Creator, that you lead us toward peace, guide our footsteps toward peace, and make us reach our desired destination for life, gladness, and peace.
Oh, I don't have my glasses on. May you.
Here you go. I can read it. May you rescue us from the hand. Sorry. May you rescue us from the hand of every foe, ambush along the way, and from all manner of punishments that assemble to come to earth. May you send blessing in our work and grant us grace, kindness, and mercy in your eyes and in the eyes of all who see us. May you hear the sound of our humble request. Blessed are you, Creator, who hears prayer. Amen. Thank you, Reverend. It's really great to spend time with you.
Thank you for having me.
Just continue together in strength.
Absolutely.
Amen.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. See you next time.